Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 990, December the 18th, 2019, Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, of course it is Wednesday, and of course you know every Wednesday I take out the trash and have some chicken. So tonight I'll be taking out the trash and having some chicken. Now let's get to the news of the day. Well, what do you know? It appears that Judge Collyer, who's the head judge of the FISA court, has issued a letter of rebuke to the FBI. Whoopity-doo. Keep in mind that it was in October of 2018 that Mark Meadows wrote a letter to Judge Collyer to ask her, what the hell you doing? Look at what all has happened. Is there going to be any accountability at the FISA court? Well, she finally got around to writing that letter because Judge Collyer is quite aware of all the people now raising, particularly members of Congress who've been saying it now on TV for the past week or so since the Horowitz report came out. Where is the FISA court judge? Where is Judge Collyer? Where is John Roberts? They're silent. So, because of pressure, she wrote this letter. And basically, it's a rebuke of the FBI, but she essentially is saying in the letter, but Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, the director of the Federal Bureau, if I'm with her, has come up with a plan to fix things. He's got 40 things he's going to do. They're going to clean up the mess. Right. So, anyway, it's basically a big, as people would say, nothing burger. So, in my mind, if you say just any of the local counties that we all live in, if a county judge were to have prosecutors come into his courtroom and pull off this kind of crap, present this much false evidence, false affidavits in the court under oath, sworn testimony to the court, that court judge would bring those corrupt prosecutors back into the courtroom. He would charge them with contempt, and he would probably go over their head to the Attorney General of the state, whatever state that would be, would go to the Attorney General of the state and present all of the evidence and information to the Attorney General about what took place with the corrupt prosecutors, and they would be investigated and likely indicted. But here we can see that Judge Collyer, John Roberts, and no one else really has any interest whatsoever in actually holding any of these people accountable. And it makes you wonder, just as has been questioned here in the past couple of days, were these FISA court judges in on this? Man, oh man, the swamp is very deep and it's very, very wide. But I have no confidence whatsoever in the FISA court. Never did. Never believed it was even constitutional. If you ever needed to, all you have to do is read Collyer's letter if you want the slam dunk, case closed reason why we need to abolish the entire damn FISA court and the whole process. Totally unconstitutional from the very beginning. Never should have been created, and it's time to abolish the damn FISA court, and probably the FBI right along with it. Start over. Create a new agency. Completely get rid of the FBI. That's what I would do if it were me. Well, it looks like Twitch McConnell has said no to Chuck the Cuck Schumer on his demands for witnesses and procedures that he wants in the Senate trial. Clearly, Twitch McConnell is not interested in playing ball with Chuck the Cuck after what he's seen over in the House. And now Chucky is out there crying that it's not fair. It's not fair. Guess what, Chucky? It hasn't been fair to Trump since the day he took office. And actually going back before that, when they originated the coup on him. No, Chucky, life is not fair, especially in Washington, D.C. in the swamp. in the District of Criminals. Definitely isn't fair. But I'll get back to this here in the end of the video. I have more to say on this. Not so much this, but something that ties into this. I'll get back to it. Well, it looks like Burisma Joe, quid pro quo Joe Biden's doctor, is now giving him the thumbs up. He says that Joe is a vigorous 77-year-old healthy man, healthy enough to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. No, actually, he's got the early stages of dementia setting in. He's dumber than a doorknob. Even if he were 100% of his mental faculties, he's still, dumber than a doorknob. He's obviously involved in a lot of, has been involved his entire career in a lot of corruption. It's not even close. But you know what? Unless the rotten Reverend Clinton throws her hat in and somehow finds a way to ditch Burisma Joe, he's probably going to be the nominee. And I'm hoping that's the case. Because I would love nothing. I mean, obviously my first choice would be the rotten Reverend in a rematch. That would be the absolute... To me, that would be the most ultimate entertainment I can ever possibly imagine as a rematch. But if you can't get the rotten Reverend Clinton, for some reason she just can't make it happen, then quid pro quo Joe, Burisma Joe, would definitely be my second choice. That would also be quite entertaining. And it just may end up that way. Did any of you see the letter that Trump wrote to Madame Botox? It's really a very good letter. I mean, if he wrote that letter, I mean, that's a very good letter. I mean, he lays out the entire corrupt coup against him. He starts at the very beginning, goes through the Mueller witch hunt. He goes through the entire thing. He brings up great legal arguments. He just lays it out. I mean, if Trump wrote that letter, he did an absolutely fantastic job. It's only 7 pages long. You ought to read it. And what I liked best about it was he gets to the very end in the last 2 to 3 paragraphs and says, now, I'm not writing this letter because I think it's going to change your mind and that you're going to do the right thing and back off this impeachment hoax. I'm doing this so that it'll go into the records for history's sake so that 100 years from now, people can look back on it and know what this impeachment was all about. And that's why I'm actually writing you the letter. So it would go in the historical archives. So very good move there by Trump, because he is correct. 100 years from now, when people look back on this incredible president, who I think will go down in history as one in our top 5 presidents, and people ask, how could one of the greatest presidents ever, 100 years from now, they'll be looking back and saying, how could one of the greatest presidents ever have been impeached? And they're going to pull out that letter where he explains everything. Yes, that's right. History will be very, very kind to President Trump, I am sure, and not so much to the demo-commies, who that party may not even exist 5 years from now. Trump may outlast the Democratic Party. It's very likely. Do not count that out. Well, it looks like Rick Gates, who was Manafort's partner, got 45 days in jail. He was a cooperating witness, but he did quite a few things he probably shouldn't have done. And I guess the thing that bothered me most about what he did was he was stealing from Manafort. He was literally stealing from Manafort, admitted to it. He was ripping off his partner. So you notice how in those trials they have no problem with Gates ripping off Manafort. I mean, he's sitting there admitting that he was stealing from his business partner. Yeah, no crime at all in that. No problem with that at all. So he's a dirtball. It doesn't bother me that he got 45 days in jail. I have no love for this guy whatsoever. So whoop-de-doo, he got 45 days in jail. Rick Gates. And speaking of Rick Gates and Manafort, the same day that we get this news, we get the story that Manafort has been taken to the hospital. He had some sort of a cardiac event. I guess that could mean a stroke or a heart attack or something. Something going on with Manafort. And that's sad because, my thoughts on Manafort is he came in to work for the Trump campaign. He volunteered at a time when most people and the establishment were trying to destroy Trump. And Manafort came in there and he did a great job. If you remember, they were trying to steal Trump's delegates. And Manafort came in, he put the kibosh on it, he closed the deal, he made sure that Trump got his votes, and that's probably why they went after him so hard. And he did a good job for Trump, and he's a lobbyist, and these lobbyists are they walk the line between legal and illegal. But if you're going to go after Manafort, my only problem with them going after Manafort is if you're going after Manafort, there's thousands of other lobbyists who do exactly what he does, and many of them far worse. My problem with Manafort is that they singled him out, and they singled him out because he supported Trump and did a really good job of helping Trump when the establishment was trying to cut his legs out from underneath him. And that's his real crime. That's the real crime that they went after Manafort for. Well, look what we have here. Andrew Wiseass, the leader of the Hillary donor posse. He's writing an op-ed saying that Trump could be charged with crimes in 2025 after he leaves the White House. Yeah, right. Well, in 2025, you may still be in prison, Mr. Wiseass. Because let's not forget, as Durham goes through this investigation, he's going to find that Wiseass was actually in the DOJ, in the white collar crime division. He was shown the dossier. He was all about the dossier. He knew all of this stuff back in the summer of 2016. Back in July and August, he was associating with the coup plotters. Then he ends up being the lead attorney for Uncle Bob the Executioner. And that means that not only did Uncle Bob, Andrew Weissman, the whole Hillary donor posse, they all knew probably within a couple days, maybe hours of assuming the case, the counterintelligence operation that morphed itself into a criminal investigation. They knew that the dossier was complete garbage, and the entire thing, the entire case against Trump was garbage. All this evidence we're seeing in the Horowitz report, Mueller and his team had access to all of the same information, yet they went ahead with the coup anyway. So I think that Uncle Bob the Executioner, and certainly Andrew Wiseass, may find himself in the crosshairs of Durham. I'm sure he's going to question them. I would not be the least bit surprised if they are in some way charged with crimes, because the attempt to take down Trump in the coup was what was going on with the Mueller witch hunt. And it's no longer possible for a rational person to believe that Mueller and Wiseass and the whole crew were acting in good faith as a special counsel to investigate Trump-Russia collusion, because they knew it was bullshit from day one. They're going to have to explain that, because that makes them part of the coup plotters. And I would be shocked if Durham is not aware of that fact, or at some point discovers that fact, and I would be surprised if he looks at it and then walks away from it. I would be very surprised at that. I think at the very least, he's going to question these people, at the very least. So, as more people dig and dig and dig into the Inspector General's report, and then go back and look at these texts from Page and Strzok and other the pre-stap releases that we had from his interviews, more people begin to connect more dots, and so we are now 100% sure of the fact. There was some question about it before, but now we know 100% for sure that Peter's been stroking us, and Peter's been stroking us, and Joe Pientka, who's key in this whole thing, and I talked about why 2 videos ago. Strzok and Pientka did meet with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer and Erica Thompson, she is obviously connected to Australian intelligence, and that in fact it was a 2-on-2 meeting. No one else was there. Peter's been stroking us. Joe Pientka met with Downer and Erica Thompson on August the 2nd of 2016. And we also now 100% confirmed Bill Priestap, Strzok's boss, number one man at counterintelligence, was the first person to approve, the first, high-level person to approve of the counterintelligence operation against the Trump campaign. It went all the way to Priestap, and he is the one who signed off, giving the go-ahead to begin the counterintelligence operation. And that actually occurred on the 28th. The 28th is when he signed the order, even though the date we've been given is the 31st. So Priestap obviously officially said yes, go with the counterintelligence operation, formally signed off on it on the 28th, and then the 31st, 3 days later, is when they actually, I guess, created the Operation Crossfire Hurricane, and from that point, Strzok's business. But October 31st is the date that we talk about being the start of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, but actually it began 3 days before when Peter's been stroking us as boss. Priestap signed off on it to give the go-ahead to do that. So that has now been clarified. Attorney General Barr, in that interview he did with MSNBC, is really worth watching at least once. I've watched it 3 or 4 times now. It's a really great interview. There's a couple things that Barr said there that I really love. There's at one point where the guy interviewing him is kind of questioning about, there was a lot of stuff going on. It was kind of the fog of war. You had the Russians involving themselves in the election, all this stuff going on. You had an election going on. Perhaps there was some FBI agents who did some things. Maybe the DOJ. They maybe did some things they shouldn't have done. But is it good to go into the DOJ and the FBI and possibly investigate all this and investigate the investigators and blah blah blah. And Barr then goes into about a 5-minute explanation of all the things that did happen. All the things that did happen, and he went specifically through the things that did happen. And at the end of that, then he looks at the interviewer and goes, "So yes, I think that the Attorney General has a responsibility to make sure that we follow the rule of law at the Department of Justice, and that citizens are not targeted unlawfully or unfairly by the Department of Justice. And I think that that's the Attorney General's job, and I'm going to do it." He very forcefully says, I am going to do it. Make no mistake about it. In other words, he was sending a very clear signal to not just this guy, but to others in the media, that if you think that you're going to run that line on me to get me to back off of this, or what have you, you're out of your mind. I am absolutely all in on this. And I really liked it when he said that. But he also said something else. He told the interviewer that the dishonorable James Comey refused to sit for an interview with Horowitz to discuss any classified matters, which the entire thing they would be discussing would be classified matters. And then he pauses after saying that and says, "But Durham doesn't have that problem. He can compel testimony." So clearly, this because the question had to do with about Comey, and his role in all of this, and at this point, because I had not heard that at this point. Now everybody knows it, but at that time I had not heard that, and now of course we understand more about it. Where Barr says, "Hey, Comey wouldn't even sit down with Horowitz to try to get to the bottom of the problems that occurred." So clearly Comey's not interested in trying to figure out what happened to fix the problems. He wouldn't even sit down with Horowitz. But Durham doesn't have that problem. So there was quite a bit of taunting by Barr all throughout this interview, but done in the only way that he can do it. It's taunting, but he's very smart about how he's unlike Trump, who's just like literally just taunts you right to your face, and he goes big. He wants it on the big screen. With Barr, his taunting is much more subtle, but it's taunting nonetheless. And it's a really good interview. I'm talking about the one with MSNBC. The one with the guy from the Wall Street Journal is not bad, but not nearly as good as the other one. The one on MSNBC was better because he was kind of, this liberal reporter was trying to, it's almost like he was trying to make Barr feel bad about the fact that he's investigating the investigators. Whereas the guy at the Wall Street Journal really wasn't taking that approach. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, the interview with Bill Barr with MSNBC. Very, very good. I've watched it 3 or 4 times now. But it should also be noted, since we're on the topic, that it wasn't just the dishonorable James Comey who would not sit for an interview with Horowitz. Also, James Baker, Comey's general counsel, who also is going to be indicted and go to federal prison. Baker also would not sit down with Horowitz, nor would Jonathan Weiner, nor would Glenn Simpson. Glenn Simpson, Baker, Weiner, and Comey, none of them would sit down with Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz. And if you can't sit down with Huckleberry Horowitz, then you damn sure can't sit down with Durham. Because you can't lie to Durham. You can't spin Durham. And you can't bullshit Durham. Not unless you want to go to jail. On the spot. Probably arrest you on the spot. So, yes, these people are all going to be, all the ones I just mentioned are all going to be indicted. They were all part of the coup plot. They were all part of a lot of other things as well. In general corruption. Another thing I wanted to bring up just before it slips my mind while I'm thinking about it is, as most of you know who've been watching my videos for however many months or years on this subject as we've been covering this story. I've been on this story since April 4th of 2017. And during that time, particularly over the last year and a half or so, I've expressed my opinion that I believe that there were at least 4 people that had FISA warrants on them. But it's interesting that in the Huckleberry Horowitz report, he only talks about there being one FISA, and that being Carter Page. So I want to go on record right now that I am not backing off of my view of that. I don't believe that Carter Page was the only one who had a FISA on him. I believe that Manafort, Kushner, and Papadopoulos also had FISAs on them. Flynn, Papadopoulos, and Manafort. I believe all 3 of them likely had FISAs on them as well. Huckleberry Horowitz doesn't tell us about that, but that doesn't mean that didn't happen. I think that Durham will likely get to the bottom of that, and we'll find out that there was not just a FISA on Carter Page, but there were also FISAs on other people. I think that there were probably FISAs on, and this is based on the Page-Strzok texts, where they're talking about FISAs with other people, not just Carter Page. They'd already gotten the FISA on Carter Page when they're having another discussion about someone else, and it sounds like they're talking about Kushner. And I cannot believe that they didn't have a FISA on Manafort. That investigation goes back to 2014, and they reopened that investigation. So I would have a rough time believing that. As Papadopoulos is the same way, I'd have a rough time believing they didn't have a FISA on him. So just because Huckleberry Horowitz didn't point that out doesn't mean it's not true. Now there is one other possibility. It's also a possibility that Mr. Potato Head John Brennan used Five Eyes intelligence, in other words, other countries, to conduct some sort of electronic surveillance or spying on those individuals. And so instead of getting a FISA, they used other countries. But if they did use other countries, then all that, and then were part of Five Eyes, then that should all be in the, it should be in the records. So if they don't find it in the records, that's even worse. If Durham discovers that there was Five Eyes intelligence spying that went on that wasn't actually documented on the record and done legitimately, then that would certainly be something that would be an issue for those countries to deal with on their own right, because that would be, a problem with their situation. It affects our situation, but if the Australians find out that they were conducting surveillance for Mr. Potato Head and they were doing it outside the system, that would be, of course, illegal. So I believe that that's possible, and I also believe that once Durham does finish his work, that you are going to see these other countries where things were going on, where there are going to be other people probably in these countries. Australia, the UK are probably going to end up having to launch some criminal investigations for people on their side of the pond that were involved in this thing as well. I think that'll probably happen. We have John Solomon out with a new report. Again, just more bad news for Burisma Joe and his son Hunter. It appears that Latvia had flagged suspicious payments to Hunter Biden and had urged Ukraine to investigate, and that was in February, in fact, February 18th of 2016. February 18th of 2016, the government of Latvia flagged suspicious payments to Hunter Biden and urged the Ukrainians to investigate. More bad news. And of course, we have the rotten Reverend Clinton, who came out with a tweet yesterday, again saying no one is above the law. I'm glad she feels that way, because she is going to also be indicted for her role in the conspiracy, of which she played a major role. As most of you know, it's been my position for a very long time that she was the mastermind of this operation, that she planned, directed, organized, and controlled the operation. I don't have time to go into it, but as soon as we have a slow news day, I'm going to go back for a recap of why I make this point. But Hillary didn't just send out this tweet. No, that's not all she did. The rotten Reverend, in addition to the tweet, left a link to this left-wing activist group to their website, and essentially what they're doing is they are organizing for impeachment rallies and marches. They're going to have rallies and marches to press for impeachment. The rotten Reverend Clinton, no one's above the law. And of course, we're hearing today that Pelosi does have the votes. Yeah, she has the votes, and we're learning more about what happened with Jeff Van Drew. Basically, Jeff Van Drew was told, like everyone else who was thinking about not voting for this, was told, if you do not vote for impeachment, we are going to primary you with someone. We're going to withhold money from you. We're going to kick you off any committees that you're on. You're done as a Democrat. So that's why Jeff Van Drew really had no choice. If he wants to remain in Congress, which he does, then he has to remain in Congress as a Republican, because he was told by Pelosi and the leadership that if you don't go along with impeachment, we're going to F you. That's basically what he was told. But he'll be moving over to the right side, and I think he knows that. And along with that, today, of course, we get three fantastic polls. We have the USA Today poll showing 41% support impeachment, while 56% oppose. That's USA Today poll. 56% oppose. Quinnipiac has 51% oppose. And they break it down between left, right, and center, and it appears that independents oppose by 22% more than who support. 22% more independents oppose than support. That's a huge number for independents. That's a big deal. We even have the Commie News Network poll, CNN, saying that impeachment has dropped 13 points among Democrats since they began the impeachment hearings. Impeachment has dropped 13 points among Demo-commies since the hearings. Now, I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking we've never seen the Demo-commies so unhinged. I've said so myself. Are these people crazy? Yes. Trump derangement syndrome. Trump anxiety disorder, whatever you want to call it. We have seen everything you can possibly imagine that we thought we would never see before in this country, going all the way back to the beginning, when Trump was a candidate, trying to destroy his candidacy. Then, once he became president, orchestrating the coup. We get the Mueller witch hunt. We get this, we get that. We get every investigation you can possibly think of, from the Southern District of New York, looking into his bank, his finances, his business, his kids, everything. He has been investigated to hell and back. He's been put to pure hell. And the Democrats are just getting started. Just getting started. And you're thinking, how bad can it be? You're looking at the Schiff show. You're looking at the Penguin. You're looking at Madame Botox, her teeth rattling around in her head. And you're thinking, my God, these people are nuts. These people are absolutely crazy. Could it get any worse? Could this Schiff show be any more ridiculous and despicable? Well, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, just when you thought nothing could possibly top what we've seen, guess what? The Dems pull another one out of their quiver. Check this out. So the Demo commies in the House of Representatives have decided, of course, to put together this rules committee for the rules that they'll be using to vote on the impeachment, likely today, Wednesday. And the guy that they put to head up the committee of the Rules Committee is Alcee Hastings. Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me. Alcee Hastings. Now, many of you, see, I'm an old guy, so I've been around a long time, so I remember Alcee Hastings for many, many years. But for those of you who are not familiar with Alcee Hastings, not old enough to know much about him from back in the 90s, let me give you just a brief bit of information about his background. He's now going to be the guy. Keep in mind, I'm telling you that the Democrats have decided this is going to be the guy that's going to head up the Rules Committee. Alcee Hastings. He was impeached in 1988 when he was a federal judge. He was impeached and removed from the bench for taking bribes, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Then there was a bunch of stuff that went on after that, and there was a second trial. And in the second trial, he was also found guilty of the original charges, including further charges of perjury, tampering with the evidence, thwarting a criminal investigation. As a judge, and kicked off the bench. Then he runs for Congress, and guess what? The Democrats elect him. And this guy's from Florida, by the way. So then the Democrats, after all this, after this entire thing that I just read to you, of all the crimes he committed as a federal judge, being kicked off the bench and everything else, the Democrats elect him to Congress, and 4 years after he's elected to Congress, Bill Clinton comes up for impeachment. And in that impeachment hearing, despite the fact that there were solid charges against Bill Clinton, Slick Willie, the crooked-peckered husband of the rotten Reverend Clinton, Hastings voted against all 4 articles of impeachment against Clinton, despite the overwhelming evidence. Oh, but he's not done. Then he was sued for sexual harassment back in 2011, and of course this cost the taxpayers $220,000. It was paid off that little fund that they have in Congress to pay for congressmen who get in trouble for sexual harassment. And then he's been investigated since then he's put his family on the payroll in his congressional office. There's been 3 or 4 other scandals he's been involved in. This is the guy that the Democrats are going to have laying out the rules for the vote on Wednesday.